reporting from Hawaii, and we're going to give you all the news that's fit to print here on Monday morning. And because nobody else is reporting on Monday morning, and that's what I do now. So anyway, I'm also thinking there's a real good chance I might report again tomorrow morning on any news that happened on Memorial Day that is worth knowing about before the markets open, just because of the same reason I do this report every single week. So we'll see. I haven't absolutely decided on that yet. All right, let's get into this. Randy Kirk. Like if you like, and subscribe if you would like to subscribe. Hit notify so that you can be privy quickly to all of the videos coming up over the next weeks. And then, of course, there's a Patreon if you'd like to support the channel. Well, all right. BYD over the last couple of weeks, but even more so over the weekend, is becoming a part of the mainstream discussion of the entire BEV business. And this channel has had at least 20 videos up till now, specifically looking at BYD and the Chinese folks, the Chinese companies that are manufacturing cars, the Chinese invasion, as some people are calling it, especially with Europe. Europe doesn't have the big tariffs like the United States does, keeping some of those Chinese cars out. Europe doesn't yet have the any kind of special benefits to European makers that are benefiting those makers compared to the Chinese cars. So the Chinese cars are coming into Europe like crazy. And even you can see in Europe, maybe a little bit of a look of the future in terms of all of the cars competing on kind of a level playing field, so that, yes, Tesla's getting way more than their fair share in terms of market share, but they are seeing competition from dozens of new entries coming out of China. But in particular, it's BYD. And like I say, more and more people are now talking about BYD, because for a while there, I would talk about it and nobody cared at all. But, like with so many things, what we talked about in the book, the Elon Musk mission, it's taken now 7 months, but finally BYD is getting into the crosshairs. So what is being said? Well, I've been saying, and I'll continue to say, the Chinese and the South Korean BEVs are almost certainly going to be 8 out of the 10 top BEVs in 2030. Yeah, 8 out of the top 10. So I'm saying that Tesla will be number 1 and number 2. BYD might be number 1. I don't see any other car company that has any chance of being number 1 other than Tesla and BYD at this point. There's just not enough time to get to number 1 in 2030 for any of the other makers. I don't care who you're talking about. They don't have time to design, develop, build, compete, then build more plants and build more plants and build more plants. I mean, Tesla is building plants at breakneck speed. BYD is building plants at breakneck speed. And you can see both of them are now only up to 2 million this year. So that you can see what it takes, and none of these other companies are going to be close. So so those are going to be the two competing for number 1 and number 2. That leaves these 8 spots. If you want to talk in terms of 10 spots, I think that maybe Volkswagen, maybe Stellantis, maybe Ford. Those are the only ones I think at this point that have any chance of being in that top 10 other than Chinese or South Korean makers. So because Hyundai, Kia, I think they have a pretty good shot at being number 3 at this point. Again, taking a look at what everybody's building, looking at the quality of what's being built, looking at the pricing points, the value, again, the value proposition. I think BYD has the best shot, right? I'm sorry, that Hyundai Kia has the best chance of being number 3 in that list. But we could be surprised by one of the legacies other than Hyundai Kia. Yeah, so of course, to get to that spot, to get to number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, whatever it is, in order to be in that top 10, you have to make a compelling product at a compelling price. Now you get a little bit of a pass for the next 6 years, maybe 5 or 6 years. You're going to get a little bit of a pass if you make a pretty compelling product at a pretty compelling price, because the curve on the demand for battery electric vehicles is going to be so high that pretty much anything that's reasonably compelling is going to be okay. But some things are not even reasonably compelling. And right now, Ford and VW and General Motors they're just not doing very, very well at all in terms of making compelling vehicles, a compelling price. And they're losing share in most markets. VW being the exception, they are picking up a little bit of share in Europe, but losing share in China. So anyway, it doesn't look good for Legacy. Some of them might survive, but they're going to survive in number 11, 12, 13, 14, 15th place if they do survive at all. Second subject, Wang is reporting that Tesla is shipping about 30% of the total energy storage business out there, the utility level energy storage. We're already seeing the results of this new battery capacity on solar development. So solar development is now starting to go like this. Several articles being written over the last few days that are talking about the solar ramp up in China is massive. The United States is very large. Australia is really getting on board. And then Europe, which is a little behind the curve on both battery storage and solar. The EU seems to be getting ready to come out with some new stuff that is going to start doing what, giving some incentives and whatnot to get solar and battery going stronger in Europe. The wind aspect in the northern countries, the wind aspect is coming on strong, but solar and battery is not that strong. So I see every evidence right now. I mean, just within maybe the last 60 days, we're seeing lots of installations being talked about. We're seeing lots of companies starting up, battery companies, lots of companies getting into solar. What Elon's been talking about, what Cathie Wood has been talking about, what Tony C has been talking about, it's all really coming true. I would expect to see, the 1 terawatt of energy storage by 2030. I think it's a done deal. In fact, there was one article I did see the other day I wanted to quote. Solar power has now eclipsed oil in money invested in 2022 in the United States. Solar had more investment than oil in first time that's happened. Okay, so there's an example of what I'm talking about. All right. Another piece of news here, number 3, was that FSD is now being tested in Europe and Australia. So these are not consumers testing it. These are employees apparently that have some vehicles and they're testing in Europe and Australia. You can imagine some of our YouTube friends down in Australia are very happy about that. So good for them. Another one is that the new Powerwall coming out that has 20% more energy storage than the previous the previous Powerwall. Tesla continues to increase the storage while giving you more for your money in Powerwalls. Quite a few stories right now about these Powerwalls going into Australia and setting up these virtual power efforts. This is the future. This is one piece of a huge future that Tesla, it's like so under the radar. The VPPs are going to be huge, so important, and make Tesla all kinds of money. Next on the list here is that Shanghai Model 3 production has stopped. This is based on drone operator Wuwa. And, he's been there forever. And he says, hey, they've stopped making Model 3s. Well, good. No, this is not because of demand, although Model 3s seem to be having a little bit of a demand problem. No, this would be because they're getting ready to switch over to some kind of a refresh. Everybody's thinking it's going to be Highland, and it might be. Other people think it just might be a major refresh. I would count on this being Highland. We weren't expecting this shutdown to happen until the end of June. That was what the rumors were, but here it is happening at the end of May. Be really interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks, whether we get more information on what the new version will be coming out of Shanghai. We would expect fairly coincidentally to have Fremont also producing this new version. So watch for news on that as well. Okay, and then my last thought for the day is everything is pointing to the world being on the tipping point, just right at the tipping point on BEV disruption. Tony Siebert says that it's 10% of the total market. It looks like we will go past 10% of the total market in 2023 being BEVs. It'll be 30+% in China. It'll be 20+% in Europe. It'll be probably crossing the 10% threshold in the United States. So it looks like worldwide, though, we'll go past 10%, and that's the tipping point. You can see it everywhere. You can see it in what Ford's Farley said this week in terms of needing Tesla's charging stations in order to sell their cars. You can see it in terms of the conversation starting to switch to the Chinese BEV manufacturers. You can see it in terms of folks that didn't say so a year ago, saying electric vehicles are a fait accompli at this point, as far as eventually having 100% of the market. So this tipping point is really important, because if the public, especially the investing public, starts to get it, this is the one thing they don't get. This is one of the things that's holding Tesla stock down. What they don't get is what we started the conversation talking about. And that is, if we've hit the tipping point, and if we are now going to see 50, 60, 70% a year increases in BEV sales, then Tesla will be able to sell every car they make, period. Yes, if you got a tough market like the United States is this year with interest rates and everything else, yeah, you might have to drop your prices a little bit or do a little more advertising or whatever. But in a normal market, if the auto market is normal and going along with normal average sales per year, no, Tesla would not have to. If this was a normal year, Tesla would not have had to advertise to sell every car they can make, because they have huge markets, everything from Arizona to South Carolina, and from Texas, really, even including Texas, but especially north of Texas, all the way to the Canadian border is still virgin territory. There's hardly any Teslas being sold in that territory. And it's not because they can't afford it. And it's not because they hate electric cars. It's because the gasoline prices are so much less there, and they don't see the value proposition yet. But now that there's price parity, the value proposition becomes obvious, and we should start to see this tipping point start to make it obvious to everybody. And when the investing public gets it, you know what's going to happen. To the moon. Okay, so if this has been helpful or valuable, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit them, do all that stuff, and then Patreon as well. It's been great talking to you.